The glass doors slide open with a soft hiss. A luxury store, glowing under chandeliers, welcomes customers with perfume in the air and clothes worth thousands on silver racks. Every detail screams wealth, privilege, and exclusivity. And then, he walks in. A black man, mid-40s, sharp black suit tailored to perfection, shoes polished until they gleam. His presence commands respect, but instead of admiration, eyes dart toward him with suspicion. A store clerk pauses mid-conversation, her eyes narrowing. Two security guards glance at each other and move closer, their footsteps heavy. He moves calmly through the store, his hand grazing an expensive jacket on display. But before he can even take a second look, a voice cuts through the air. "Sir," the clerk says with a forced smile, her tone dripping with arrogance. "These items, they're not really in your price range. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." The words hang in the air like poison. Other shoppers glance, some smirk, others whisper. The guards don't hide their stares, waiting, watching, expecting him to be trouble. But the man doesn't argue. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply smiles faintly, as if he's heard this all before. Because he has. And then, the moment they least expect, he pulls out a slim leather folder, sets it gently on the counter, and slides a single document toward the clerk. She frowns, confused, then reads. The words drain the color from her face. The paper isn't a receipt. It isn't a credit check. It's a legal contract, proof of ownership, because this man didn't come to the shop. He came as the new owner of the entire building they stand in. Silence crushes the room. The guards freeze. The clerk's forced smile vanishes, replaced with pure shock. And in that instant, the question becomes louder than any words. Why does respect still have a price tag when a black man can own the very building where people laugh at him in, before the suit, before the millions, before the power of ownership? There was just a boy. He grew up in a small neighborhood where broken streetlights flickered at night, and the sound of sirens was more common than lullabies. His mother worked double shifts, cleaning offices by day, serving tables by night. His father? He was there when he could be, doing construction work, hands rough and calloused, his back bent from years of labor. They didn't have much, but they had dreams. From the very beginning, he was taught two things: work twice as hard and expect half the recognition. He noticed it in school. When he raised his hand, teachers often overlooked him. When he answered correctly, his classmates laughed it off as luck. And when he told them he wanted to be a businessman one day, some chuckled. People like you don't become CEOs. Be realistic. But he didn't stop dreaming. He couldn't. Every page told him what was possible. Skyscrapers, boardrooms, deals. Worth millions. He wanted that life, not for the money, but for the freedom. The freedom to walk into any room and never feel small again. High school came with challenges. He was smart, but doors closed quickly. While others got internships, he got excuses. "We've already filled the spots," they told him, even as he watched his white classmates get accepted. But rejection lit a fire inside him. If no one would open the door, he would build his own. College was no easier. He worked late nights, stacking shelves at a grocery store, balancing classes by day. Professors doubted his business proposals, telling him they weren't realistic for someone in your position. Still, he studied harder. He built small hustles, buying cheap electronics, fixing them, reselling them. Every dollar mattered. Every risk was a step closer to proof. And slowly, brick by brick, his world began to change. After graduation, he launched his first real business, a small tech repair shop tucked into the corner of a strip mall. The rent was high, the neighborhood wasn't great, and the customers came slowly. But he refused to give up. He put in 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping in the back office. His friends told him to quit, but quitting was never in his vocabulary. Months turned into years. The business grew slowly at first, then faster. His reputation spread. He wasn't just fixing gadgets, he was building trust, and with trust came opportunity. Soon he expanded to multiple shops, then reinvested in real estate, and then into tech startups. What started as survival turned into wealth. By the time he was in his 40s, he wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. His net worth crossed into millions, his businesses spread across states, and his name carried weight in boardrooms. But here's the cruel truth. No matter how much money he made, no matter how many titles he earned, the world still saw him first as a black man. He learned that lesson painfully, time and time again. Walking into luxury car dealerships, he'd be told, "The used cars are outside." Checking into five-star hotels, staff assumed he was there to make deliveries, and in high-end stores, clerks watched him like a thief rather than a customer. It was exhausting and it was insulting. But he never exploded. He never screamed. Instead, he did something more powerful. He remembered every slight, every smirk, every insult, and he turned them into motivation. So when the day came that he had the chance to buy not just a store, but the entire building that the store rented, space in, he didn't hesitate. It wasn't just an investment, it was personal. Because to him, ownership wasn't about flexing wealth. It was about rewriting the narrative, about proving, once and for all, that respect shouldn't be something you have to buy, but if the world insisted on putting a price tag on it, he was ready to pay. And so, on that quiet afternoon, when he stepped into that luxury boutique, in his tailored suit, he carried with him not just his wealth, but his entire journey. Every insult, every rejection, every sleepless night, all leading to this moment. He was ready, but the world still wasn't ready for him. The doors of the boutique closed behind him with a soft click, but the atmosphere inside grew heavier with each step he took. Marble floors reflected the gleam of chandeliers, glass cases sparkled with diamonds and silk ties. Yet all that shine was dulled by the weight of silent judgment, the kind that doesn't need words. Eyes followed him, calculating, dismissive, already convinced he didn't belong. He walked slowly, not with hesitation, but with the calm grace of someone used to being underestimated. His suit fit him perfectly, his watch was sleek, and his shoes polished. Yet the clerk behind the counter tilted her head, lips curling with the faintest smirk, as if wealth had a skin tone and he clearly didn't match it. She stepped forward, her voice carrying fake sweetness. "Can I help you?" The words sounded polite, but the tone made it clear. She didn't believe he could afford even the smallest item in the store. He glanced at her briefly, then let his eyes wander over the shelves. Jackets, cufflinks, bags. He wasn't in a hurry, but the more he ignored her assumptions, the more frustrated she became. "Sir," she said again, firmer this time, her smile thinning. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable browsing somewhere else. We have more affordable selections in our partner stores across town." She lowered her voice, as though sharing a secret, but loud enough that two nearby shoppers could hear. One of them chuckled under his breath. The other shook her head in pity, as though watching a man embarrass himself. He said nothing. Silence was his shield, his refusal to dance to the tune of their prejudice. Instead, he picked up a jacket from the rack, running his hand across the fabric. Italian wool, worth thousands. The clerk's smile stiffened. She leaned in, lowering her tone to a whisper sharp enough to cut. "That piece costs more than most people make in a month. I wouldn't want you to waste your time." Behind her, the manager emerged, a tall man in a navy suit, eyes narrowing the moment he saw him. He didn't bother with a smile. "Is there a problem here?" he asked the clerk. She shook her head quickly, whispering just loud enough, He doesn't look like he's our usual clientele." The manager nodded knowingly, as though the judgment was an obvious truth. He approached with authority, crossing his arms. "Sir, if you're not planning to make a purchase, I'll kindly ask you not to loiter. Security has already raised concerns." And just like that, the guards stepped closer. Two men in black uniforms, hands resting casually near their belts, eyes hard and suspicious. They hadn't heard him raise his voice, hadn't seen him do a thing wrong, but their presence sent a message clear as glass. They were ready to escort him out at the first excuse. He could feel the air in the store shift. Other customers weren't even pretending anymore. Some stared openly, waiting for a scene. Others pretended to browse, but their ears strained to catch every word. To them, he was no longer a man shopping. He was a spectacle, a disruption, a story they'd tell later. Inside, anger burned. Not the wild, uncontrollable kind, but a steady flame he'd carried for years. Every insult, every time someone had looked down on him, every barrier built higher because of the color of his skin, it all pressed down in this moment. But still, he kept his composure. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his shoulders, and spoke for the first time since entering. His voice was calm, steady, almost disarming. "I'd like to speak to the store director," he said. The manager blinked, caught off guard. "I am the director," he replied flatly, his tone making it clear he didn't believe this customer deserved that level of service. "And I'm telling you, if you're not here to purchase, you need to leave." One of the guards shifted closer, the sound of his shoes echoing on the marble. The clerk folded her arms, her smirk now bolder, confident the situation was going exactly how she wanted. For a moment, silence hung heavy. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every person watching. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed. Others met his gaze without shame, almost daring him to push back. He let the silence stretch until the weight of it pressed on everyone's chest. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket pocket. The guards tensed instantly, one of them stepping forward. But he moved with deliberate calm, pulling out nothing more threatening than a leather folder. He placed it on the counter in front of the manager with a quiet thud. The room seemed to hold its breath. The manager frowned, confused, then flipped. It opened. His eyes scanned the page. His smirk faltered. He read it again, slower this time. The clerk leaned over curiously, her face drained of color. The guards glanced at each other, unsure. It wasn't a bill of sale for a jacket. It wasn't a credit application. It was ownership papers, legal documents signed and sealed. Proof that the man standing in front of them was not just a customer, not just a millionaire, but the new landlord of the very building they were standing in. The silence that followed was unlike any before. It wasn't the silence of judgment, or mockery, or whispered laughter. It was the silence of realization, the kind that cuts deeper than any insult. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile triumphantly. He simply looked at the manager, his expression calm but unshakable, and said, "Next time, be careful who you decide doesn't belong here." The clerk's mouth opened, then closed. No words came. The guard stepped back, suddenly uncertain. The shoppers shifted uncomfortably, some turning away in shame. And in that moment, every ounce of arrogance in the room dissolved into regret. The room seemed frozen in time, the chandeliers casting long, sharp shadows across the marble floor. Every eye was on him, the black millionaire who had walked into their boutique only minutes before, calm, composed, and dignified. And now, the reality of who he truly was hit like a thunderbolt. He picked up the leather folder, flipping it open with deliberate care. The gold-embossed letters reflected the soft light. Legal owner, 245 Lexington Avenue. The words weren't just ink on paper. They were a statement, a silent but undeniable truth that shook the very foundation of the boutique. The clerk's smirk vanished instantly. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes widened, darting between the man and the document, as though hoping it was some kind of elaborate joke. But the calm, steady gaze of the black millionaire told her there was no jest. The manager's face paled, veins popping on his forehead. He swallowed hard, unable to form words. His authority, which had moments ago loomed like a shield behind the counter, crumbled in the face of undeniable truth. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "This can't—" The millionaire's voice, calm and unwavering, filled the boutique. "This isn't about the jacket. It's not about the handbags or the luxury you think defines a person. This is about respect. You refused to see me as a customer. You assumed my worth by the color of my skin. That assumption cost you everything in this room." The guards shifted nervously, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. They were trained to protect the establishment, but here there was nothing to protect except their own embarrassment. Every step they had taken toward him before now felt meaningless, almost ridiculous, under the weight of this revelation. The other shoppers had frozen, their whispers dying in their throats. Some quickly averted their eyes, ashamed at having silently judged. Others gawked, unable to comprehend the audacity and precision with which the man had dismantled the illusion of control they had believed so solid. The clerk's hands trembled. She looked down at the document again, then at the man. You own this building?" she finally managed, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he said simply, almost gently. "I own this building. And every store, every lease, every contract within it answers to me now. I didn't come here to teach you a lesson, but perhaps it's one worth remembering. Never assume, never judge, never laugh at someone's potential because of their skin." A heavy silence settled over the room, the kind that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The manager's shoulders slumped. The clerk lowered her head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The guards shifted uncomfortably, and the remaining customers slowly began to leave, murmuring apologies that sounded hollow even to their own ears. The millionaire walked slowly through the store, every step measured, every motion calm and deliberate. He didn't touch anything, didn't flaunt his wealth. He didn't need to. The simple act of his presence, combined with the undeniable truth of his ownership, was enough to rewrite the narrative that had existed here for years. He paused at the exit, looking back once at the stunned faces. The clerk finally looked up, eyes glistening, and muttered, I'm sorry." He didn't respond, not with words. A nod, subtle but firm, was enough. He understood that apologies are only meaningful when accompanied by reflection. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start. As he stepped outside, the late afternoon sun hit his face, casting a golden glow. He adjusted his cufflinks, his composure absolute. The baby step he had taken into the boutique had turned into a leap, not of arrogance, but of quiet triumph. He hadn't shouted, hadn't humiliated, hadn't needed to. He had shown, with clarity and precision, that the assumptions of others were meaningless against truth, persistence, and dignity. The story of the day would spread quickly, shared in whispers, social media posts, and conversations among those who had witnessed it or heard of it. The lesson would not be lost. Assumptions based on race can crumble, and wealth without integrity is hollow, but integrity wielded with quiet strength, that commands attention, respect, and justice. And in that moment, he walked away. Not just a millionaire, not just an owner, but a man who had reclaimed the respect that had always been his right, regardless of what others had believed. The boutique was quiet now, a hushed calm replacing the tension that had filled the air just moments before. The clerk stood frozen behind the counter, her hands still trembling as the reality of the day settled in. The manager, once so confident in his authority, now stared at the empty space where the millionaire had stood, his pride dissolved by the truth of ownership. The guards shifted uneasily, no longer sure what role they were meant to play. Outside, the millionaire walked along the sunlit streets with the kind of calm confidence that comes only from having fought every battle, silent or visible and emerging victorious. His steps were measured, yet there was a lightness to them, a freedom that wealth alone could not have given him. It was the freedom of dignity reclaimed, the freedom of a man who knew that no assumptions about him would ever go unchallenged again. News of the day spread quickly. Social media feeds are filled with posts from witnesses and onlookers. Conversations erupted in offices, cafes, and homes across the city. People debated, reflected, and shared the story, each retelling emphasizing the moment when prejudice collided with undeniable truth. And everywhere the story reached, it carried a single clear message: respect cannot be assumed, and assumptions have a cost. Yet the millionaire didn't relish the embarrassment of others. He didn't flaunt his victory. The lesson was never about humiliation, but about awareness and accountability. He had spent years building businesses, earning trust, and navigating a world that constantly underestimated him. The real victory was showing, without aggression or spectacle, that bias can be confronted, corrected, and turned into a moment of education. In boardrooms, schools, and homes, his story became a quiet inspiration. Young people, especially Black youth, saw not just a millionaire, but someone who had turned every slight, every doubt, and every sneer into motivation. He had transformed obstacles into stepping stones. He had shown that power isn't simply in the numbers in your bank account. It is in persistence, in calm strength, and in standing firm in the face of prejudice. For the clerk, the manager, and even the guards, it was a day of reflection. Some would carry embarrassment, others a newfound understanding. For the broader audience, the story served as a reminder that prejudice can exist anywhere, even in places designed to symbolize wealth and status, and that it is everyone's responsibility to confront it. The moral was clear. Dignity and respect are not privileges granted by appearance, race, or assumptions. They are earned by character, persistence, and integrity. And sometimes the quietest demonstration of power, calm, composed, and unwavering, speaks louder than any words of anger or vengeance. The millionaire continued his walk, the city stretching. Before him, alive with possibility. He understood that money alone doesn't erase racism, but it can amplify the message that assumptions are fragile when confronted with truth. He had claimed more than ownership of a building. He had claimed the respect he had always deserved. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across skyscrapers and streets, he paused for a moment and reflected. The journey had been long and often painful, filled with moments of doubt and judgment. Yet here he stood, not just wealthy but victorious in a deeper, more meaningful sense. His story reminded everyone watching: resilience, integrity, and calm determination can challenge a world that often judges too quickly. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, while wealth can open doors, true power lies in the ability to demand respect with dignity and to show the world that no assumption can define who you are.